It's confirmed. Something is wiping out my conversations with Grayson. I'm glad I made it home and wrote down the last one right away, because the only reason I remember it right now is because I reread my last post. Yes, I am seriously freaking out about this. This means that not only is the forgetter somehow getting access to me despite living off campus, but it is also ignoring Grayson's warning from the prior year. Either Grayson is losing his authority on campus, very possible, or the forgetter is a lot more powerful than I thought. Or both could be true. That would suck. I called Grayson up and asked if we could talk. We're just friends now. I can talk to him about these things. I asked him if I had a tendency to repeat conversations. You told me you were forgetful, he added, after he confirmed that I did. First off, wow, I told him that last year when I was panicking about finishing an assignment I'd forgotten about before the devil felt it necessary to intervene. I'm a little surprised that he remembered and also interpreted it to mean that I was forgetful enough to not remember very important conversations we'd had, which I clarified to him. Normal forgetful, I said. Assignment due dates. So repeating conversations isn't normal. No, it isn't. Has this been going on for a while? He told me that it's increased in frequency, starting sometime last year in the spring semester. He assumed it was mostly due to stress, as I'm starting to hit the harder classes in my degree program and am having to think about big decisions like internships and what I was going to do after I graduated. Some of the conversations also felt like they could have been continuations of the prior one, just with some details repeated, and he didn't feel it was significant enough to bring up. I need you to start telling me whenever I'm repeating myself, I said urgently. I think the creature that makes people forget things is responsible for this. I have no idea how it's getting to me. Can it leave campus? A long pause. It can, he said quietly. It's not coming after you, though. But I'm forgetting. Some things, he interrupted. You're forgetting some things. Not everything. That stopped me cold. My stomach twisted into an uncomfortable knot. Cassie didn't even remember her former roommate existed. If it really was the forgetter, then wouldn't I have forgotten about Grayson and his dad? The tree? Everything that's happened to me and my friends so far? I'm just forgetting the things about Grayson. The important things, like what's happening to his dad and his relationship with the university. Is there something else protecting this college, I asked? Something that wouldn't want me to help you? I think you already know the answer to that, he replied. The tree. The damn tree, the one in the graveyard, the one whose roots are spreading everywhere. I think it's time to bring in the full team to figure out this problem. Maria might be distracted by keeping the folklore society out of trouble, which might be extra hard if my theory about them being here to attract the monsters is correct, but I've still got Cassie in my corner. I told Grayson I'd see what I could find out about the tree, and then went to fill Cassie in on our problem. Also, I need to tell you what happened when I told Cassie about the incident with the garbage hill, because damn, it was savage. So there's a sentient trash pile on campus, I announced to Cassie as soon as I was home. She didn't even look at me. What, your ex came back from the dead? It was a good minute before I recovered my wits. How do you follow that up? You can't. I'm glad our friendship has progressed to the point where she can casually roast my dead ex-boyfriend like that. Anyway, she's been helping me spread rumors about the sledding tradition. Not a word about the hill trying to eat people. Instead, she's telling folks that there's debris in it and someone wiped out on it and broke both legs badly. It helps that the person who broke both legs is back on campus in a wheelchair, and while she doesn't remember exactly what happened, she's confirming the story that yes, there was an accident on the hill, and that's how it happened. We might be stupid college students that do stupid things, but we're still American, and no one wants to risk crushing medical debt on top of student loans. That's a recipe for being in debt for the rest of your life and never being able to own a home or happiness ever. It's the best we can do. Besides, in Cassie's opinion, we've got bigger problems to deal with. I filled her in about the whole forgetting things to do with Grayson, and she's decided we need to deal with that first and foremost. I think it bothers her that I'm forgetting things like she did. Bothering her more than I expected it to. She looked like she was about to cry there when I told her, and then she got angry. But it wasn't at me. And finally she calmed down and came up with a plan. We're going to run an experiment. I remember my last important conversation with Grayson because I reread it. For the next week, I'm going to avoid Grayson. I already let him know what we're doing and why. He agreed, saying if that's what I wanted to do, then he'll support it. I'm going to have no contact with him, and at the end of the week Cassie will check to see if I still remember the conversation. After that, I'll go hang out with Grayson as I usually do, and at the end of that week Cassie will check again. I'm scared to find out what the results of this will be. I'm not sure I'd be going through with it if it weren't for Cassie's insistence. Because what if it is Grayson? What if he's the trigger? Right now it's looking like he might be. We're starting the second week and I still remember. I haven't talked to him yet. I'm not sure when I'll be able to. But I wanted to type all this up in case I forget. Because something very important happened. Grayson did want a way to contact me, in case something urgent happened, so Cassie made sure he had her phone number and he could contact her instead. Which he did, and Cassie reluctantly knocked on the door of my room to let me know we had a problem. It was in the evening, not so late that campus was quiet, but late enough that the sun had set. It was an overcast day and the moon wasn't visible from behind the low-hanging clouds that had settled over campus like a shroud. Grayson's dad is missing, she said. He didn't come home from the office today. The flickering man would have found him in the past. Found him and taken him to Grayson. I wanted to throw up, and for a moment I wasn't hearing what Cassie was saying to me. I was just thinking of the pavement and how it looked with the water pooling on it. That's all. Just the texture of the sidewalk. Let's go together, she was saying when my head cleared. I'm worried about you going alone. Yeah, I said, still feeling like I wasn't fully there. That sounds good. Then I got up, got my shoes, jacket and umbrella, and it wasn't until we were crossing the street to campus that I finally came fully back to myself. Cassie was asking me if I knew where we should start. Grayson was going to stay close to his house in case his dad made it home. He'd search the surrounding neighborhood and periodically check back at the house. Cassie and I would look around campus. Campus security was also searching, but Grayson had his doubts that they'd be effective, and that was why he'd contacted us. His pessimism was understandable. They didn't know what was going on with the university president, and so Grayson had to make it sound like he was just out of the loop of where his dad was. It was possible campus security would find him, tell him his son was looking for him, and then leave him wherever he was. He'd tried not to tell Cassie what was really going on, even. Cassie told me as we walked towards the administration building that he'd only said there was an emergency. Then when she held firm, he said it was with his dad, and didn't admit to anything else until Cassie told him she already knew. After that, he was willing to tell her everything about the situation. Was he angry? I asked anxiously. Nope, she replied immediately. Didn't seem to mind at all. I told him I had to know if our experiment was going to work. So that's reassuring. He hadn't explicitly told me to keep this between us, but he also hadn't given me permission to tell anyone. I just did because I was panicking a little bit and needed some help. I'm still not used to relying on people for things. Like it's always been just my family, and we had appearances to keep up, so we didn't let people outside the family know how hard it was. Outsiders with no blood ties weren't to be trusted. They were gossips and voyeurs. Surely none of them would actually be genuine in their offers to help. Looking back, I wonder if that was actually true or just a consequence of my mother's desire to shelter us from the rest of the town. Her affair became common knowledge, after all, and small towns can be vicious. So it just feels wild to me that Grayson would trust Cassie because I trust her. We started our search at the administration building. I checked at the front desk first, telling them that Grayson was wondering where his dad was, and I'd volunteered to check his office first. The student at the front desk reluctantly made a call to the president's secretary, clearly doubting that we had any legitimate reason to be asking, and then informed us with more surprise than skepticism that the secretary confirmed he'd left for the day. After that, we followed the path that he would have taken to the nearest parking lot. We found his car from the license plate that Grayson had given us. Still there, Cassie glanced back and forth across the parking lot, as if she'd see him just standing around waiting for us to discover him. Now what, she asked. Do we follow the route he'd take towards Grayson's house if he was going on foot? I feel like we're long past the point where he would have made it home on foot, I said, thinking hard. Otherwise Grayson wouldn't have called in a panic. So we search campus. We'd go methodically, I suggested. Sweep back and forth, starting from the administration building. I suggested splitting up so we could each cover one half of campus, but Cassie quickly shot that down. We'd stick together. Also, she didn't know what Grayson's dad looked like. My hopes were pretty thin that we'd find him, but I felt we had to try. This might not be Grayson's real dad, and while I no longer thought that Grayson loved him, it was clear that he felt responsible for his condition and was trying his best to take care of him during his deterioration. I guess I can understand that. I know that it's not my fault that things have happened like they did on campus. It's not my fault what happened to Patricia or Stephen or anyone else, but I still feel like I have to do something so it doesn't happen to others. Grayson can't walk away either. This was foisted on him, and he's trying to make it better in whatever small way he can. We walked and walked. Occasionally we saw someone from campus security also walking out on the sidewalks, but it didn't seem to me like they were deliberately searching. More like they were dutifully out looking, but without a real plan and without a sense of urgency. I unconsciously picked up my pace until Cassie told me to calm down. That panicking wasn't going to help, and I was going to help, and I was going to walk her into the dirt if I didn't slow down. Then, to make matters better, it began to rain. It quickly became a steady rainfall, not a downpour, but enough to quickly coat the sidewalks in a glistening sheen underneath the streetlights. Visibility dropped even further, and Cassie insisted we slow down even more, so that she could make sure he hadn't wandered off the sidewalk or between buildings where he would be easier to miss. What do I tell him? I said fretfully. Sorry, Grayson, but we lost your dad. You didn't lose him, Cassie snapped. And once we hit the other end of campus, we call him up and tell him it's time to involve the police. But stop. Her tone cut through me like ice. He is not your ex, she continued. He's not going to get upset because you're not a mind reader or a goddamn miracle worker here. And if he does, I will end him. Now take a deep breath. I did as she said. 4 seconds in, 4 seconds hold, 6 seconds out. Just like my therapist had told me during our handful of sessions. I was focusing on this when Cassie put out an arm to stop me. Look, she said urgently. Does that seem weird to you? She was staring at the ground. It took me a moment to realize what she was seeing. The water on the ground. It was moving. Flowing like a stream. Flowing uphill. And I knew exactly where it was going. The graveyard, I whispered with growing horror. That's where he is. Cassie was asking what I was talking about, but I wasn't listening to her anymore. I began to run. I abandoned my umbrella and ran. From the sound of footsteps behind me, Cassie was following suit, no longer trying to ask what was going on. She was trusting that I knew what was going on and following me, knowing that there would be time for explanations later. It had to be the graveyard. That was the direction the water was flowing, towards the center of campus. And that was where the tree was, waiting to drink him up. The gate to the cemetery was hanging wide open. My heart sank in dread as we rounded the corner and saw it drifting in the wind, glistening in the electric lights. Beyond it stretched the graveyard, wreathed in an almost impenetrable darkness, the headstones brooding shapes in the gloom. I came to a halt just outside the boundary and stared into the cemetery, straining my eyes to locate any sign of movement. You're not actually going in there, are you? Cassie panted as she caught up. I think he's in there, I whispered. But the groundskeeper. I know. I took a deep breath. Of the two of us, I was better suited for this. I grew up in a rural area. I knew how to navigate a dark forest. And if our flight here was any indication, I was certainly a better runner than Cassie. My legs didn't want to move. They felt like they were made of lead. He's not worth it, Cassie said. He's already dead. You said so yourself. Already dead. And not worth risking my life over. But this wasn't just about Grayson's dad. I feel like everything is pointing towards this tree, I said quietly. There's been signs. And by signs, I mean the devil contriving a reason for me to go into the graveyard. I don't think that was entirely because he enjoys sowing chaos. He does. He totally does. But there is also a purpose behind his actions. I know this. I don't know if the tree is responsible for what's happening to me. I continued, but I see its roots everywhere. I think it's hurting Grayson. I don't know if it's protecting campus or hurting the college, or maybe it's just another entity with no real purpose. But I'm not going to find out standing out here. Cassie swore under her breath. I'm going with you. We can watch out for the groundskeeper together. I started to protest, but Cassie didn't let me. She just walked into the graveyard. I wanted to tell her no, that I'd already made this mistake, that I trusted Stephen and I was wrong, and he died. That I couldn't bear to go through that again. She didn't give me a chance. She was inside the graveyard before I could speak, and then it was too late, because the only thing worse than her going inside would be making a scene inside the graveyard boundaries. I feel like that would attract the groundskeeper's attention. I followed her. What choice did I have? My heart was pounding and I wanted nothing more than to curl up on the muddy ground and stay there until I died, but Cassie was moving resolutely forward, walking carefully on the slick paving stones. At one point she reached back and I took her hand, and just that small connection, the feel of her palm against mine, starkly warm in the cold rain, gave me some small measure of courage. I wasn't doing this alone. And if we saw the groundskeeper, well, I'd drag her with me as I ran for the exit if I had to. It'd be different this time. The tree was easy to find even in the darkness. It stood starkly against the dark sky, without form or definition, like a paper cutout. We made our way towards it. Both of us were scanning the graveyard, and Cassie would periodically pause to look behind as well. The groundskeeper was slow. We had that in our favor, at least. The rain seemed to be lessening as well, and I could hear even the distant creaking of the tree's branches from underneath the pattering of the raindrops. There, Cassie hissed, pointing. Is that the president or the groundskeeper? He stood a short distance ahead, a few rows of headstones over. It was the president. The groundskeeper is way more intimidating in stature. We picked our way over, watching our steps. I edged up to him, calling out so I wouldn't inadvertently sneak up and startle him. He didn't turn to look at me. His gaze was fixed on the headstone. Is that your grave? I ventured. It should be, he said. He purchased a plot and had the headstone made, but they never put a body in the ground and never engraved a date. There was a flash of light behind me. I flinched. Cassie had taken a photo of it and had to use flash in the darkness. The president didn't seem to care, but I had to hope it wouldn't attract the attention of the groundskeeper. You seem a bit more with it right now, I ventured. The graveyard does that for me. That's why they keep me out of it, you know. They. The administration. I had my doubts. The flickering man. Grayson? He turned and began walking towards the exit. Cassie and I quickly followed. We need to get you two out of here, he said firmly. Shouldn't have used flash. Sorry, Cassie said. But I don't think we could find that headstone again in the daylight. Who made you like this? I demanded. Is it the tree? The gate was just ahead, hanging wide open. I thought we'd gone further inside than this. My heart pounded in my chest. I wanted answers. Something told me that once we passed that gate I'd lose my chance. He wasn't answering, not right away. He tilted his head as he walked, considering his answer, while everything inside me was screaming to please, just tell me something, even if it wasn't the answer to the question I'd asked. The tree isn't the cause, he said thoughtfully. I could tell he was slipping away again. It was a reaction, when they realized what was happening. We were at the gate. Beside me, Cassie made a small, strangled sound of dismay. The river, the travelling river, had arrived while we were inside. It flowed around the graveyard. I stared at it in dismay, tracing its course as it wrapped around the fence of the cemetery, curving around to hug the corners and encircle it like a moat. The water was choppy. agitated. It spanned wide, far too wide for us to jump or maybe even swim. Like it was trying to cover the whole of campus. I glanced behind us, afraid of what I'd see. It was so hard to make out details in the darkness. Was that figure a headstone, or was it the hunched form of the groundskeeper making its slow progress towards us? My skin was icy cold from both the rain and fear. "Thank you," Grayson's dad said, turning to me. He was smiling sadly. "You didn't have to come after me." It was nothing, I replied automatically. I wasn't really listening. I was staring at the river and wondering what we could do now, cut off by its expanse. "It was everything," he replied, still smiling. "Listen, it's not the body that's the problem here. It's the soul. They haven't gotten a replacement in a while. Got too greedy there and tried to do something different. I don't know if they've got one in mind or if they're finally putting an end to this charade. But with this last bit of lucidity, I'm going to make sure they're not able to trap anyone else." I opened my mouth to speak, to ask who it was that I was talking to. "Whose soul?" "Beside me," Cassie said with relief that the river was receding, but I wasn't listening to her. I was staring at the president's body and the person inside, who turned away from me, still smiling. ... and threw himself into the river. He swam down, straight down, and vanished into the darkness. The river raced away from us, like a snake fleeing the shadow of a hawk, convulsing on itself like it was trying to spit him back out. It was too late. He was too far down, too determined. And there are things in the river that have a mind and a hunger of their own. He was gone. The river gave up, flattening out as if in exhaustion, and then it became a puddle glistening darkly like a slab of stone, and then it was gone. Nothing but water on the soaked earth, slowly sinking into the ground. "What the hell just happened?" Cassie asked, from beside me after a long moment of silence. "Yeah, my thoughts exactly." Cassie told Grayson what happened. "He sounded defeated on the phone," she said, "like he hadn't expected a good outcome all along. He asked that we not talk about this with anyone for now. He had to figure out what to do. The university needed a president, after all. Then he hung up and hasn't called back. He won't answer Cassie's calls either. I want to tell him to forget it, to let the university flounder, that he doesn't owe them anything. I will tell him that when I next talk to him. But before that, I'm writing all of this down and telling you. At 12 years old, I made the biggest mistake of my life. I became a local child star in a town full of psychopaths. I won't say it was my conscious decision. Mum had been pushing for me to attend auditions since I was a preschooler. It was obvious from a young age that my mother wanted me to be on TV. Instead of toys, she bought me a camera to film my own movies and started a private social media account documenting my progress. But I was still a kid. I wanted to play outside with my friends, not drive for 4 hours out of town to an audition for a kids' commercial. I made it clear I had no interest in being on TV. Even if it looked cool, the idea of being in front of a camera made me kind of nauseous. However, my mother was pretty dead set on me becoming a child actor when preteen and teen productions started airing on local TV. The TV studio in town was fairly new, expanding local shows to all demographics. Think of it like a bootleg Disney. The owner was an unknown Korean billionaire who, instead of setting his sights on larger cities, decided to build a kids' TV studio right in the middle of our coastal town, which, ironically, became the heart. This post would be a cry out for help if our town existed. To you guys, we're nothing, just a blip in the middle of nowhere. You won't be able to find us or the shows, and that's why I'm fucking terrified. The new studio was built on top of an old cemetery. Initially, townspeople protested, until the owner poured money into the town itself, buying a new academy for the high school and personally paying for every senior college tuition. This guy clearly wanted our town, and he would do anything to get it. Bright Smiles Studios, which is an ironic name, considering what they are presently. Anyway, they had surprisingly good TV. Their productions were original and fun, like Nickelodeon with a lower budget. One of my favorites was called The Pirate King. a live-action game show where contestants would have the chance to become mini swashbucklers under the guidance of the starry-eyed Pirate King. That was the only show I wouldn't mind being on, but it was impossible to get an audition. We did try, but no matter how many strongly worded emails my mother sent the director, begging him to give me a chance, it was always a polite no. The main young crew members had already been established, so I had zero chance. With the Pirate King being their most popular show, local kids either needed connections to become a contestant or wealthy parents. I had neither, so I became a casual viewer, tuning in every Saturday morning to watch my favourite swashbucklers causing havoc. The Pirate King ran for 3 years before being abruptly pulled off air for seemingly no reason. I thought it was a dud at first. Instead of showing new episodes of the Pirate King, they played the local news instead. Mom suggested they were taking a break, so I went to look for older episodes, but they were gone. I strictly remembered watching the previous week, because Jinx, my favourite character, severed the head of the evil statue controlling the contestants. I remembered pausing halfway through to freak out, trying to show Mum. But that week's episode was gone too. I waited a whole week for the Pirate King. We were left on a cliffhanger, with the kid crew becoming official members and crowned with their pirate hats. Them becoming an official part of the crew had been an ongoing plot point for a while as the show found its footing, slowly becoming more of a drama with scripted lines. I wasn't interested in the game show aspect. I wanted to know more about the world. Topper and Jinx started as stowaways, and Leia was a princess from the City of Diamonds. For a game show, the story easily pulled me in. The adventures of 4 young stowaways joining the dreaded Pirate King's group. They had come so far, and I could tell the Pirate King had taken a liking to them. Every episode, he started with a question: will my 4 friends become official members of the starry-eyed crew? He paused, playfully pushing Topper to walk the plank. Or will it be over for them? And after 2 years of waiting, we were going to get our answer. The last episode ended with Jinx, Topper, and Leia kneeling on board their ship. The Pirate King made them take the pirate oath, gifting them with their own starry eyes, and with a nod and wink at the camera, he announced his new crew. Join us next week where we meet a whole new group of young piratesses. The camera zoomed into the crowd of contestants, while the main crew members waved at the camera with wide smiles. I knew their starry eyes weren't real, but they looked so cool. I never got to know what happened next because the show went off air. Bright Smile Studios issued a statement claiming the 4 main crew members had come into contact with a mysterious illness. I thought it was the flu, though Mum told me they were very sick. Apparently, during filming, the kids fell into the water and contracted some kind of bacterial infection. I was already skeptical as a curious 8-year-old. I could understand one of them getting sick, but all 4. At the same time? The Pirate King ended with no satisfying conclusion, not even a scene with the kids being real pirates. Saturday morning TV became boring. The studio tried to bring in copycat replicas, but neither of them were good enough. There was a game show with a similar concept, but instead of pirates, it was spies. It was for older kids, so there was a lot more drama. But again, it wasn't the Pirate King. We had all grown up with Topper, Jinx, Leia and Bellamy, so losing them was jarring. Without their familiar faces on our screens every Saturday, the kids in my town slowly started to lose interest. I was semi-watching the spy show until the main leads died in an explosion escaping their evil parents. In reality, the 2 left for college, abandoning their contracts. Mum tried to get me to audition for that show, but you had to be at least 15. Eventually, even Spy Children devolved into another generic game show. I got bored and watched SpongeBob on cable instead. For my 12th birthday, Mum surprised me with an audition for a brand new production. Cabbage Patch was Bright Smile Studios' latest attempt at making another Pirate King. This time for older kids, the age range for applicants was 11 to 13. I had seen advertisements and casting calls all over town. Mom didn't tell me, but she had already signed me up and received a call back. So instead of presents and birthday cake, I was being dragged to the other side of town for an audition I was barely interested in. The whole thing was a full-day process. The first round of auditions in the morning were part of a group. I had to stand in a line with a group of kids and speak the lines on a crumpled piece of paper. Then we had lunch, and Mum ran off to grab snacks from the convenience store. The other applicants had already made friends, and the only kid who talked to me had thrown up from nerves and was cut from the process. So, that left me standing in the main reception area, trying to force down a candy bar. Mum bought me 3 candy bars, a can of soda, and a gas station sandwich. She left me to join the other parents in a separate waiting room, which left me and my shitty tuna mayo sandwich against the world. The room with the rest of the applicants was too loud, so I ventured into the main visitors' reception. There were posters of all of the studio's works, with the majority being their most popular. I was admiring a huge framed photo of the Pirate King himself, when the door opened and then slammed shut. I caught a shadow striding toward the automatic doors, before freezing in place. Luke, the woman at the desk, peered over her laptop, her tone a warning. "Don't go wandering, young man." "I'm not," the shadow grumbled, and I twisted around. I wasn't expecting to see Jinx from the Pirate King. The guy was a high school kid at this point, 16 or 17 years old. He looked different from his kid self, taller, dark brown hair poking from a baseball cap. His present attire, a short-sleeved shirt and shorts, transformed him into a normal teenager, no longer a shipmate. On the Season 1 poster behind him, Jinx was a 6-year-old swashbuckler with a laughing grin. This guy resembled an average kid with a video game addiction. His behavior, though, was odd. It was weird, like watching an episode of animals do the funniest things. Jinx acted like a predator closing in on prey. He moved slowly, almost like a Pink Panther skit, taking long strides across the room. When he was caught, the woman shooting him a warning look, the junior pirate held up his hands in mocking surrender. But he didn't give up. After studying her movements and waiting for the exact moment her attention was caught, he tried again. This time, almost like a cartoon, catapulting into an abrupt sprint. He made it halfway towards the automatic doors before Luke. Jinx stopped, freezing in place. "What are you doing?" The woman let out an exasperated sigh, slamming the spacebar. "Do you want attention?" "No," the boy muttered. "Good," she said, going back to her screen. "I know it must be extremely hard not to be annoying, but I'm sure you can find a way to entertain yourself," the woman sighed. "Where is Evie?" Jinx blew a raspberry. "Don't know, don't care." After eyeing the elevator behind her, the guy gave up, leaning against the wall by the exit with his arms folded, a sleek pair of Ray-Bans shading his eyes. I half wondered if he was hiding his starry pupils. It was a nostalgia trip just being in his presence. Reality hit, though, and I reminded myself the Pirate King was fiction. Jinx was just a kid. Still, though, he was looking pretty good for someone who had supposedly contracted a deadly disease. I couldn't help myself, making my way over to him in hesitant strides. "Excuse me, I didn't mean my voice to squeak." Jinx was like my childhood hero. He made me realize I could be a pirate too if I set my mind to it. Jinx revealed in Season 2 that he suffered from ADHD, and the whole episode was dedicated to proving that kids with colourful brains could be pirates too. I was diagnosed with ADHD at the age of 7, so Jinx's speech really hit me. Obviously, the content was kid-friendly, with the usual life lessons coming into play, but it was a rush to see a kid just like me, defeating the bad guys and saving the crew. Jinx highlighted his struggles with concentration, especially when fighting, telling the audience, "Sometimes my brain is too loud." When the Pirate King was kidnapped, along with the rest of the kids, Jinx had no choice but to believe in himself, accept his brain was beautiful in its own way, and save the day. And he did, managing to take out the bad guy of the week, single-handedly saving his crew. Until then, I saw my ADHD as a weight suffocating my chest. In school, ADHD meant I was different. But Jinx taught me I was more than that. I was a special kind of pirate. That's what I wanted to tell the guy, but my words twisted up. Jinx was all I could say. From the Pirate King. The kid plucked off his Ray-Bans and I swore I caught the slightest sparkle in his iris, just like in the show, like his eyes were filled with starlight. I started to get giddy, already choking on what I was going to ask him. Did he ever become a pirate? Why did the show end? What disease was he sick with? But the one burning question that had been driving me mad since the cancellation managed to slip out of my mouth before I could choke it back. What do your starry eyes mean? I didn't realize I was yelling until the woman working at the desk told me to hush. Jinx lazily dragged his gaze to me like I was a specimen in a jar. Instead of answering, the kid's gaze snapped to the candy bars in my hand, his lips curving into a smirk. He scoffed, and something in me snapped in two. The pirate was looking at me like the kids in my school. Jinx cocked his head, mocking his character's smile. "Geez, don't you have enough candy?" Chubbs, he laughed loudly, and I felt my entire world crashing down. I had been struggling with my weight for a while. I never thought my favorite pirate would point it out so cruelly too. Do not meet your heroes. I was paralyzed, my mouth still frozen in a grin. I'm a big fan, I kept talking, choking on words flying out of my mouth, and I hated myself for it. I hated him for looking down at me like I was worthless. Jinx nodded, his eyes going skyward. "Coo-woo," he said dismissively. I tried again, getting progressively more choked up. "You were my favorite pirate." "I'm not a pirate," Chubbs, he slipped his glasses back on. "Luke," the woman scolded, "you cannot blame Nibiru for your attitude." "I'm not blaming Nibiru," Jinx retorted, knocking the back of his head on the wall with a groan. "Can't you see I'm talking to my adoring fan?" He said fan like spitting venom, with a giant dollop of sarcasm. I felt my cheeks going scarlet, my eyes filling with tears. The woman sighed, her gaze glued to her laptop. "Be nice to the kid, or you're going back into queue, young man. Your choice." Jinx groaned, jumping up and down on his heels. For a 17-year-old, he was acting like a child. Settling me with a patronizing smile, the boy was suddenly bursting with energy, as if he'd just inhaled helium, jumping in front of me like a cartoon character. "OWRY. I'm so glad you like the show," he said, forcing a painful grin, reminiscent of his pirate self. "That's like super great. Have a fantastic day, all right? Don't do drugs. Drugs bad." I must have looked on the edge of breaking into sobs when Jinx's demeanor softened. "Do you believe in gods, kid?" he asked in a low murmur. His question took me off guard. "Like Medusa?" Jinx scrunched his nose up. "No, you idiot. Geez, you're like too stupid to function. I mean, like actual gods." "Luke, stop being a dick." Topper, another member of the Pirate King crew, was standing in the doorway. The last time I saw Topper, he was a prepubescent little kid giggling at the camera. This guy was hunched over in a sweatshirt and jeans, hiding under blondish curls. Like Jinx, he didn't suit modern-day clothes. I preferred him in his pirate costume. Unlike Jinx, Topper didn't have starry eyes. His smile wasn't exactly friendly, more of a quirk of amusement. Still, at least he wasn't being an asshole. There was something in his face I wasn't sure I was allowed to see. Darkness, evident in shadowed eyes and pale cheeks. Jinx and Topper had been sick, but this was different. Deeper, like something had twisted them inside out. Luke ignored his pirate crewmate, shaded eyes on the ceiling. "The kid doesn't belong here," he grumbled. "You, of all people, should know that." Ouch. Two members of my favorite pirate crew were confirming my worst insecurities, and somehow I couldn't move. But I didn't even want to be on TV. I didn't mean for my voice to break. Anger and pain twisting in my voice. It was my mum's idea to bring me today. Then Leave Jinx didn't look at me, though I caught urgency in his tone. Fucking run. Topper nodded to me, pulling his hood over his curls. Luke is being an asshole as usual. He shot the other boy a pointed glare, but he's right. Gesturing to the door, his lips formed a small smile. If you don't want to be here, kid, I want you to walk out of that door, and don't turn back. His eyes darkened. Run, Topper repeated Jinx's words, and it was the plea in his words, the slight twist in his lip that was trying to scream, but kept collapsing into a smile. That is what sent me backing away. Jinx and Topper were both telling me to get out in their own way, and I was slowly starting to notice the slight glint in their eyes. They were scared. Topper kept shooting glances at the woman behind the desk, Jinx inching toward the door. Topper's eyes reminded me of staring directly into a starless sky, a vacancy that had aged him way beyond 17. They were scared, I thought, glancing at the mysterious woman behind the desk. Of her. I thought she worked at the studio, but the more I caught the boy's frantic eyes, as well as Jinx's strange behavior when I met him, trying to Pink Panther his way towards the door without being caught. This woman was a guard. Something ice-cold crept down my spine, phantom bugs filling my mouth. What did she say to Jinx again? Hey, Chubbs! As if the kid was reading my mind, Jinx lifted his head, gesturing toward the door. Go. I did my best to nod, before I backed into something warm, and smelled overwhelmingly of my mother's perfume. How dare you talk to my son like that? Mum's voice came from behind me, her tone startlingly cold. Mum pushed past me, ignoring my attempt to stop her. I don't care who you are, she spat at the two of them. You're a pair of washed-out ex-child actors who haven't been relevant in a long time, she laughed, and I wanted to bury myself in the ground. She ignored my attempt to drag her away. And you have the audacity to speak to my son like that, Mum gently tugged away from me, using her stern tone. When? Let go of me, honey. These kids need to be taught a lesson. I could already hear her voice breaking. Mum was seconds from crying, and the two pirates were barely paying attention to her. She stepped forward. How dare you tell my child he is not good enough? Ma'am, the guard spoke up, only for Mum to cut her off. Look at you, she scolded the two guys. I remember you when you were little kids. Mum made a wet-sounding sputtering noise. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Mum folded her arms like she'd won. I don't know why you're smiling, she spat at Jinx. You should be ashamed of yourselves. Two unsuccessful brats bullying my child. Jinx surprised me with a harsh laugh. You've got no idea what you're talking about, lady. His tone darkened. His lips curled into a smirk. In fact, do you want to know the real reason behind our cancellation? Mum shrugged. You were clearly big-headed. Jinx winked. Nah, it's a little crazier than that. That's enough. Luke, the female guard, stepped in. Go to the queue room. Her gaze flicked to Topper. Both of you. Wait, what did I do? Topper demanded. He was the one being a dick. Jinx laughed bitterly. That's rich. Throwing me under the bus as usual, Topper. Topper's eyes narrowed. It's AC, twisted to the guard. It's not my fault Luke's got the C in his head. The other boy scoffed. At least he speaks to me. And I'm not even 20 yet. That's not a good thing, Topper snapped back. Don't argue. Queue room, the woman pointed at the door. Now. Mum nodded, satisfied. Exactly what these bullies need, she said. A well-needed timeout. Topper made the mistake of rolling his eyes, and my mother blew up. Luckily, I managed to grab her, pulling Mum away. I'm reporting the two of you, Mum shrieked, and to think children actually looked up to you. Oh, please do, Jinx said. the guard striding over to the two of them, grabbing both pirates like they were her own children. Jinx tried to snatch his arm away with an uncharacteristic hiss. I could tell from the way Topper was wincing, the woman's grasp was a little too tight. She marched them over to an elevator, the two of them stumbling with her. "Get off of me," Jinx gritted out. "I can walk on my own." When the door between us slammed shut, I caught the latter of Jinx's words. "Report us all you want, lady," he yelled. "Ow, that hurts." "You can't stop me from," the boy shouted something unintelligible, his voice collapsing into angry muffle yelling. After whatever that was, I wasn't sure I could continue my audition like nothing happened. Mum ruffled my hair and gave me a hug. "Ignore them," she said, cupping my cheek. "You're going to be great when." The second part of the auditions were individual ones. I stood in front of a panel of 4 adults, stumbling my way through my lines. Mum told me I did so well. I wasn't sure about that. 3 days went by, and Mum got a call while I was watching TV. I got the part of Dex. I mean, that's what I guessed. There was no other reason why she would be trying to cartwheel across the kitchen. I thought it was a joke, but nope. The producers of Cabbage Patch and the mayor, who had a little too much creative control, wanted me to come for a chemistry read with the other kids. Cabbage Patch was like a kid's version of Friends. 5 friends living together in a colourful house. The show was primarily for young teenagers, so there was an educational aspect. After reading lines with the other 4 chosen kids, I was given the role of Dex, the middle school dropout. Cabbage Patch was filmed on a mock set in Bright Smile Studios, and it became my second home. I was there from 7 to 12 every weekday and Saturday morning. It was fun to film. It was basically a never-ending party surrounded by cameras. We were given candy and sugar to hype us up, and were encouraged to act as crazy as possible. Think of Friends, but it's a colourful kids' sitcom with educational aspects. As the middle school dropout, I was usually the instigator for the rainbow sprinkle parties. Cabbage Patch quickly became more popular than the Pirate King, with kids across town turning into the local channel every weekend to watch us throw food and learn about friendship. Mum was convinced I was a local celebrity. It did feel like it. The kids at school wanted me to shout my catchphrase, "What's going on here?" Cabbage Patch party every time I stepped into class. For a while, I was on the top of the world. Fast forward 4 years, however, I was starting to understand why the Pirate King boys told me to run. I was 15 years old, sitting in an adult club, opposite the mayor of all people. I had lost all my baby fat, and I could finally look at myself in the mirror without wincing. Puberty had been good to me, but I never forgot Jinx's nickname, Chubbs. By now, I was fully aware our beloved mayor was more corrupt than a fucking dictator. Next to me, Harry, a member of the Cabbage Patch gang, was completely out of it, his head of red curls nestled on my shoulder, half-lidded eyes skating the ceiling. I met Harry as a bright-eyed 13-year-old obsessed with Pokemon. I nudged him, and he made a groaning noise. I was already uncomfortable in a club full of adults. "Boys," the mayor cleared his throat, dropping a baggie of white powder. Harry leaned forward, sliding over the powder with his index. I didn't even know he was conscious. "Thank ya." I lost Harry when our director encouraged us to take cocaine to exaggerate the zaniness of Cabbage Patch. He was fired, of course, but the damage was already done. I had lost my friend to constant paranoia, breakdowns, and sudden, abrupt bursts of energy. Harry was the best person ever when he was high, and a tyrant on a come down. In a town that clearly did not give a fuck about its kids, Harry's problem was ignored. The mayor coughed promptly, jumping to his feet. I had a feeling there was another reason for our meeting. He would send an assistant if he was just handing over drugs. I was never here. Harry laughed, offering the man a 2-fingered salute. "Aye, aye, Captain." I got home that night, coming face to face with my mother. When she folded her arms, "You stink of cigarette smoke." I was studying late, I lied. With Harry, I shrugged. He smokes. Her expression brightened. Any mention of Cabbage Patch made her smile. I wondered what she would say if I told her I was in secret detox. Well, get some sleep, she said. You have a recording in the morning. Mum kissed my forehead, and I mumbled at her to go away. That was the last time I ever spoke to my mother. Our last normal Cabbage Patch recording was mundane as usual. I wasn't a fan of my costume for that day, neon pants and a bright yellow shirt. Iris was talking to me about something, her girlfriend, maybe. I wasn't fully listening. I think she was talking about her outfit, another colourful explosion. The four of us were squeezed together on the couch for the opening shot, and I was staring dazedly at a new light situated in front of us. It was too bright, too invasive, like invisible tendrils poking at my eyes. What's that? I nudged Harry on my left, who was still on a calm down. We were getting better, but Harry was already addicted, already going out every night for his next fix. He was a coked-up mess. The local Gazette was going to have a field day with him. Dunno, Harry responded in a dull murmur. Pulling his knees to his chest, he made a snorting noise. I think it's to make us more zazzed. His eyes lazily rolled to me, and he winked. Since coke is bad, like Ovies, I could see so much of Jinx the pirate in him. Not exactly a good thing. They're called concentration lights, Iris murmured. For Harry, clearly. Harry nudged her with a laugh. You love me. The girl shuffled away from him. You smell like Coachella. Is he still using Matthew twisted around, whipping off his rainbow glasses? I didn't reply, Harry muttering for the boy to shut the fuckety fuck up. I should have been paying attention to Harry's behaviour, the way he couldn't keep still, the slightly manic look in his eyes. His lips slowly curling into a grin, dead eyes settled on the camera. Action. One word. One light, bright enough to blind me. We began our opening friendship song as usual, but once my vision had cleared, my body wasn't working the way it should. At first I thought I was having a seizure or a stroke. My body stiffened up, the left side of my face drooping. The world went deathly silent apart from a single ringing sound, like a coin rattling in my skull. Then, pain. It hit me in writhing waves, first across the back of my head, creeping down my spine. An invisible monster clawing into my skull. Something wet, something ice cold, was running down my chin. Blood. It was all over my hands, soaking the front of my shirt. My body moved like it wasn't mine, my neck snapping into place. I looked directly into the light, hypnotized by its beauty. Dropping onto the ground on my hands and knees, I was straddling something warm. A moving form that kicked and screamed beneath me, an animalistic shriek rattling my skull. But I shut it up, grabbing its shoulders and slamming its head into the floor. The moving form didn't have a face. I only felt its warmth. Giddy, I ran my fingers across the surface of their skin and then plunged my fingers through, using my teeth to get deeper and deeper, until that warmth was in my mouth, slithering wetness dripping and caught between my teeth. Sound returned, slamming into me. I was screaming. No, I was laughing. My mouth was full of something wet, something mushy and hard to swallow. But I kept eating, gnawing into warm, slithering jelly that squelched at the back of my throat. I was aware of panic around me, but it only motivated me to dive to my feet. I started forwards, giggling, waving my hands in front of me, grasping slithering sausages. In the corner of my eye, Iris was standing on the couch, bouncing up and down, half of her own face clenched between her nails, her lips spread out into a skeletal grin. Her movements excited me. I wanted to join her. But I also wanted to hide what was in my fist. It was mine. Crawling onto my stomach, I remember feeling like a wiggly worm. I stuffed the warmth into my mouth, joining in with the others' squawks. It was a game for us, the others trying to snatch pieces of flesh from my fists. In reality, I had chewed through half of the camera guy. His brains stained my hands. I started towards our mayor, who, to my confusion, barked at the cameras to keep rolling. "This is it," he said through gasping breaths. "This is enough." His eyes went skyward, lips stretching into a cry of mania. "Is this what you want, Nibiru?" he demanded. "Instead of our children?" Half conscious, I grabbed him by the neck, sinking my teeth into her flesh. She tasted so good, laughing, her giggles turning to gurgles. "Now this," he declared when I dug my teeth in further. Harry was dead, his trembling body still writhing, his jaw moving like he was still eating, gnawing on thin air. Iris's head was there 1 minute and gone the next, spraying me in scarlet. Matthew was a pile of wriggling mush on the ground. This is what he wants. Our director's half-lidded, mutilated eyes were on me. And, sobering up, I became aware of what I was doing. What I had done. And why Jinx and Topper told me to fucking run. It's been 2 years since Bright Smile Studios officially declared ownership of me. Nibiru, a god I didn't even know existed, has been pulling the strings since the start. My town has been subtly giving him children through the years, in the form of contestants on Bright Smile Studios shows. But then he demanded the 4 members of the Pirate King's crew. I watched it on TV. What I thought was a fictional bit, I was witnessing them pledge themselves to the Pirate King. Nibiru. Our town told him he couldn't have them, and that's why we're here. Presently, I haven't seen my mum in 3 years, and the sky above our town turned dark 6 months ago. The real world continues as normal, and we are stuck in endless, suffocating shadow. A giant pirate ship sits in the center of our town. We're told to ignore it, but I mean, who could ignore something like that? We're not allowed outside for our safety, but I only see hell through my windows. I see crowds of people brainwashed by a god whispering in their heads. I'm told to plug my ears, but I can still hear him. His voice carries on an invisible wave, crashing into my mind. Cabbage Patch is now the only source of entertainment for the Pirate King himself, the newly appointed Jinx, who was crowned 7 months ago. There was 0 point in trying to hide the pirate crew from Nibiru. He found them, and filled their eyes with stars. Now we are under their rule. 4 ex-local child stars given god-like abilities. God help us. Cabbage Patch has been twisted into a psychotic game. Instead of ending with our friendship as magic song, we are forced to brutally eat sacrifices for Nibiru. The worst part is, he just brings them back whenever he likes. So, nobody really fucking dies. It's not like we can control this. Whatever that light was, mixed with drugs, it turned us into something no longer human, a god's executioners. Thankfully, I don't remember most of it. We call it zazzing. We start the song, zazz out, and wake up covered in blood. During our first zazzing, most of us died. Harry from blood loss, Iris's head blew up, and Matthew's body turned to jelly. I can vaguely remember choking up mangled pieces of my own lungs only to wake up 2 days later with nothing but a bad migraine. To this god, we are dolls made of flesh and blood, dancing on strings. I tried to get in contact with Mum, but I can't leave the studio. The mayor told me to not even try. If not, I would be volunteering myself to Nibiru. Except last night I broke down. I needed to find my mum. I'm used to being covered in someone else after a recording. Their remains stain me, and I feel every single person ingrained into my skin. Blood doesn't even feel real anymore. It's like being covered in gunk. After showering, I headed down to the main reception area. The guard behind the desk was reading a scrappy copy of Metamorphosis. I started toward the door, slowly, holding my breath. "Excuse me." I froze. The voice was a little boy standing behind me. Déjà vu hit like ice-cold water. Dex the boy wasn't smiling. His eyes were hard, mouth twitching into a scowl. Why did you destroy our town? I was so fucking tired, and this kid was staring at me like I was a murderer. Well, in his eyes I was. My name is when I grumbled. Get out of here, kid. He folded his arms stubbornly. I want to join Cabbage Patch, he said. So, my mom and little sister will be safe. Aren't you like 8, I said dryly. And a half. Instead of responding, I took the kid's shoulders gently. What I wished Jinx had done with me. I marched him over to the door and shoved him through the 2 guards blocking my way. But I managed to catch a slither of the outside. Iris and Harry joined me, the 2 of them freshly out of the shower. I think they were looking for their parents too. We pressed our faces against the door, peering into the dark. There was a thick fog in the air, a crowd standing on the streets, and among them was my starry-eyed mother. She was like a zombie, her head tipped back, wide, moonlit eyes on the sky. I tried to get to her, but the others dragged me back. It's not worth it, Iris told me. Harry punched me in the face, hard enough to knock me out. I didn't blame him. I was so close to stepping outside. I woke up maybe 20 minutes ago. Harry has an old iPad he's been using to play Genshin, but he's crashed. It has the internet, so this is a call out to you, Mum. I know you're in the crowd, and I know you worship our pirate king. The first saw you, Mum, I want you to wake the fuck up. I'm so scared. Mum, please help me. I don't want to be on TV anymore.